Okay, so we're back in the field with Richard Lazell and Anthony Roberts, and we were just talking about the music, in fact, what we play on here, and compliments to all the people that are played on the playlist and the live sessions. I think Anthony might be listening a bit more. You never know, you might be able to book some of these acts. I think you should, actually, quite frankly.
I'm making notes.
So let's talk about, I know it's probably an interesting subject, particularly for me, because I work in Roman Road and Castle Road as a carpenter joiner quite a lot, and I remember when the first site was going through its troubles and you got involved. I do remember reading about that. And a big challenge it was, obviously, because the first thing that I went to, obviously being a big fan of the arts, I went to along, and when it was opened, and I found it very elitist initially when I first looked, and I thought there's so much more missing from it. And obviously you were drafted in initially. Is that right? You were drafted in, or?
Yeah, I mean the space had got itself in a pickle. I mean, it's not unusual for new venues to get themselves in a pickle, but they got themselves in a pickle because they weren't enough people going. And they got in a mess with the money. So if you've got those two things, then you kind of like need a new strategy. And so for a while I was that new strategy.
And it was the things you did, actually, the first thing you did, which I thought actually was probably one of the most essential things, was that, I know it sounds daft, but it was an attraction that you moved the calf right near the front of the glass there, which is, because that's the idea, because it is a little bit intimidating initially. When we first went in there, I thought, this isn't quite right, and the calf was right round the back, so you never even knew that existed. And that just drew a natural audience in, with or without art interests.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first iteration of the calf at the front was an art project called the Hunt and Art and Cafe, which I'd run in Edinburgh a couple of times, and it was a cafe run by artists where everything and anything to do with the cafe was art. So you could have some fun, you could create some buzz, you could, it needed some mojo, it needed to kind of like get some people in, and it needs some kind of like conversations. My feeling was that it was always a good space for art. Putting stuff on the walls or putting stuff in installation, that wasn't the kind of like the thing. The thing was, it needed to work as a social space as well. People needed to go in and feel comfortable in there. The architecture is stunning, but it can also be intimidating. You go through those big doors, shh, they go, they just come aside, and there's kind of like two people hiding behind a desk, which is, seems like it's 100 yards away. No one's saying hello. There's no noise. It's all clean. I wanted to make it more messy. I wanted to make it noisy.
Hence the van you put in there. I remember seeing that in the papers.
Yeah, first thing, they had this old van that was out the back, and they were showing me around and said, what are we going to do with this? And they said, well I think, I don't know, it's kind of like, we're going to sell it. And I said, okay, right, well, let's put it in the shop then. And the blood drained from their faces when they realised that
you were being serious.
Yeah, I was being serious, and that's what we did. We put it in the front of the foyer. The two head curators came to me the next day and said, what's your curatorial justification for doing this? And I said, well, I thought it'd be a bit of a laugh. And that was my curatorial justification to doing it. I mean, you could unpick it a bit more if you wanted, but I wanted to say, look, this space is our space. We can have some fun with it. We can do things that are unexpected in it. If they're not working, we can change our minds and do something else with it. And a white van, I mean, that's an Essex thing, isn't it? I'm from Essex. Essex man arrives in the gallery. First thing he does is put a white van in there. And when you looked at the van, it was actually a different van at the front. It was sort of like a Citroen at the front, something like that. You go round at the back and it was a Vauxhall. So it had been sort of like cut into two. And I said, it's for sale. And then to my horror, or surprise, or maybe not horror is the right word, some people actually started trying to buy it, Can I buy it? Yeah. And
do you know if it still exists?
Yeah, it died about, it was still alive when I left First Sight, but it died rapidly after, I think. I mean, it was on its last legs, that old thing. But it was a kind of like statement of intent. I needed to do something different, so when people came through that door, that it didn't just feel exactly the same, and that was a kind of like clean hit straight off. And it was in the paper, straight away. White van man, arrives, and and then people are talking, aren't they? And as soon as
that's the one thing, isn't it? Once people are talking about it, because I, as I say, I work a lot down in Roman and Castle Road, and it was very divided down there, and it's such an essential being there. It's so important to have that building, and the arts in particular so important as well.
Well, the project itself was such a beautiful project, and it got disconnected from its original ideas. If you'd have said, 5 years before it was built, we're going to have a £20 million gallery, it's going to be an international architect that's going to come and do it. It's going to be distinctive. It's going to be original. It's going to be free for the people of Colchester for the next 200 years to house the most beautiful work that's ever been made in the history of the world. Warhol, Monet, people that we'd never heard of, the kind of people that you're putting on your show now. In 100 years, you know, you just said, "Oh, you'd be mad. That's never going to happen. We're never going to be able to do that. That's just insane. That's crazy talk, Anthony. Stop it. You know, we'll never be able to do that."
Man with the van is coming in.
Yeah, but that's what happened. The building got built. It was Kath Wood. She was the person that drove that project. She brought that beautiful thing to Colchester. But in its first opening iteration, it kind of lost its way because it lost its connection with its original ideas. And I was there to put some of that original mojo back in, to rattle the turnstiles, to have some input, to reconnect. The fact that I was local had a huge impact straight away. I could have been anyone, but I worked for 30 years, nearly 30 years in Colchester, so people were immediately kind of well disposed to the kind of stuff that I was trying to do. And that was to kind of democratise the place, to give some people some ownership over it, to make them feel comfortable, to give them a place where they could come and get off with each other, to snog people, to kind of like eat, to feel ill, to kind of like feel shy, to feel to cry, to feel happy, to live a bit, to put those memories and human experiences inside the building. And then, you know, that kind of history and affection begins to grow in the same way that it has grown for our little venue down the road. People love our venue, but it's because it's 30 years old. It's got a history of people doing those kind of things, and First Sight is growing.
How on earth did you manage to do both things? Because that must have been some long days doing that.
Yeah, it was. No, I started at 7 in the morning every morning, and I worked right through, and it was like nuts. It was kind of like a nuts time. But, you know, I really wanted to do it. I was kind of like, I would have been there at 6 if they'd have opened the doors a bit early. You know, I was really, really keen to do it because I loved the project, and you know, I loved the town, and it's just felt kind of like really pleased and happy to be able to, you know, because as you know, you go doing these jobs, everyone had an opinion. It's like a football team, wasn't it? You know, everyone's got an opinion about it.
Yeah, and it's very difficult because obviously I'm in a rock and hard place because I didn't want to put up an argument because otherwise I could lose work.
Really? Is that what you've seen?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Right.
Particularly,
so you would turn up to kind of like put their cupboard in, and they would kind of like start off about First Sight, and you'd sort of like have to kind of like bite your lip.
Well, some cases, if it was negative, then I would, because I'm a very supportive, obviously, to the arts.
Sure.
It was probably 75% for, which was good.
Okay.
What about you? Did you receive much criticism when you? Because obviously, I know that I know it upset the staff because there were staff they're not doing things and so on and not doing much at all, and it was a case of shaping that up a bit as well. So there were people upset over that, but
not really. I mean, the staff were kind of like so battered. Because of the atmosphere when I went there was absolutely toxic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it was like there was a whole kind of feeling was poisonous, and they'd kind of circled the wagons, you know. They were so criticised all the time. They'd got terrible morale. They'd kind of like worked really hard. Everyone was saying bad things, and you know, part of my job was just to kind of like cheer them all up a bit, you know, to make them feel good about what they're doing, to give them a little purpose, a little bit of direction, to put a program together. I did a big open exhibition, which was so needed. You know, it was so needed to do, and to completely open the doors, and to.
It certainly has changed around now. There is certainly a much bigger contingent going in, and a lot more. You've got the local artists as well, which is important as well.
Yes, definitely, and the Grayson Perry's done a huge amount of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on its journey now, and I hope I kind of like played a little part of it in repositioning it when it really needed it, and then I ran off back to my little art centre.
So, Richard, are you involved at all in the arts? Do you get involved in the arts in your own way? Is it something that you enjoy? Is it an attraction for you?
Yeah, it's kind of my life, really. So I did have a bit of connection with First Sight when it was still being built. So I knew the history of how it was going to be, and I did some small projects connected with it. And so I think, you know, Anthony's underselling a little bit about what he achieved. I think it was fantastic what he managed to do. But I think for me the arts are they're for everybody, and they are and everybody can be creative in one way or another. And that's something that people forget and they don't realise. But I mean, I get involved in teaching and mentoring sometimes, and there's kind of no greater pleasure than giving people the power to be creative.
Very much so.
It's an incredible thing.
Very much so. I mean, particularly doing this show again, I've had students that were 11 years and on and been signed from here. But seeing the growth initially of coming into the studio, wanted to learn how to play, how to write, how to do things, and thinking, again, it's having that hand with somebody. You've changed their life. You give them the power to go and produce stuff that they can do better than I can now, which is also annoying. That's why probably I don't play as much as I should, Anthony. I kicked out my own band. Well, listen, thank you so much for giving up the time, just for being here and supporting what you do, and it's very, very important. The Arts Centre, I say, I've really enjoyed. I've played there and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a great venue, and particularly it's brought in so many new artists right from the start. As you say, I'm very much the fan of. I don't necessarily on this playlist. I don't necessarily like the fact that there are one or two that I'm happy to support, but I generally like to look for the new artists just starting up or are not established and just working their way along. The rest of them can go to the bigger platforms. This is such an important thing. So I think I'm in the same frame of mind as you are.
Well, I think there's a definite synergy, and look, it's been really nice to come in here because what you're doing here, off air, you talk about the number of people that are sending stuff, the way that the program's growing, the way that people record nowadays, how much easier it is to put stuff out there, and how embracing you are of all that, and that feeds into kind of like what we do on their little venue and our live stage, and I'm so pleased. I love local radio. I love this town. I love what the kind of ambition and listening to those recordings, those sessions that you've done. They're so crisp. They're so kind of like cool, and it's really good. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, okay, I'm going to play a track from Bug-Eye, I'm Not the One, and we're going to clear up all the mess they've made.